contemplate that question as we go through this today, and also to help you understand a little bit about the foundational components of why cells work the way they do and where redox chemistry comes into play. All right? So that has to do with this an acronym called REACT, R-E-A-C-T, and we'll talk about that most all of this presentation. So the truth is, all living creatures need to be able to respond, react, and change and adapt to our changing world. So we're going to cover cell anatomy, the mechanism of action of the adaptation of cells in our bodies, redox science basics, and some practical solutions for us all as human beings. What can we do today to be a little healthier, to apply the science? And can we dim the lights just a little bit more? Thanks. Because some of the arrows are a little bit thrown off by fluorescence. Well, our cell anatomy. Here.
I'm the wrong person.
That'll work. We got enough ambient light. You guys will fall asleep at home. Okay. So we have a cell membrane, and this maintains fluid and mineral balances for our cells. The rest of our cell anatomy includes things like a nucleus that directs the actions of our cells and houses the DNA, sort of like the brain of our cell. The endoplasmic reticulum, that's a big word, is involved in detoxification and metabolic functions. The mitochondria are the powerhouse of our cells, and some cells have 2, some have thousands of mitochondria, depending on what they need to be doing. And they're involved in running the operations of powering the cell, much the same way our lungs are involved with breathing. And the vacuoles are getting rid of the waste of the cell, prepared for excretion, get rid of it. And then lysosomes break down nutrients, and our Golgi apparatus in the cell distributes cellular byproducts around the cell. So here's the reason that when our cells are healthy, so are we. It has to do with the fact that our cell anatomy is very corresponding to our human anatomy. So, for example, the cell membrane functions like our kidney does. The nucleus functions like our brain. The endoplasmic reticulum is exactly what our liver does. The mitochondria are much like our lungs. They're transforming air into the oxygen that we need and helping to get rid of the carbon dioxide that we don't want. Our vacuole works just like a colon, a lysosome like a stomach, and a Golgi apparatus like our blood vessels. And so today, as we go through REACT, think about the fact that our cells really are just little people in a way. So R stands for rest and recovery. And the nucleus and the mitochondria are the key components of the rest actions for a cell. And so our cells and our body require rest to allow for this repair work to occur. For example, we get really busy with repair during sleep, and our hormones and biorhythms direct an orchestra of events that lead to everything from our brain cells getting back into balance electrically to our joint surfaces smoothing themselves out and getting ready for the next day to walk and run. The central nervous system is another place that rest and recovery is very intriguing. Our brain cells are very sophisticated in what they do. Think about it. They transfer information with chemicals from one cell to another and allow us to operate our bodies. In return for that sophistication, they're very slow at recovery. The brain, therefore, is very sensitive to toxicities. And to compensate, the brain has extra antioxidants and better blood flow than much of our tissues. For example, the brain consumes about 20% of our oxygen, but only accounts for 2% of our body weight. It's crazy. And during sleep, our cells literally become electrically back in balance that they lose during the day when we're thinking and busy. That cell membrane is integral in that process of repolarization of the cell. Another area of rest and recovery that is a good example is our muscles, and because they're busy recovering from physical exercise, they have extra mitochondria to do this work. And so their repair is accelerated by that mitochondrial energy production, and that also assists in detoxification as well from buildup of waste. Joint cartilage is subject to oxidation and inflammation, but it's very linked to redox balance. And so we'll spend a minute talking about some redox concepts here. So joint repair from wear and tear requires redox molecules to be present and in balance. So the mitochondria are critical in activating the repair process using these little molecules. The molecules in our body are manufactured in our cells during the manufacturing of energy. So any cell that's making some energy is also making redox molecule. Very handy. So cells that need a lot of energy get a lot of molecules produced. In our bodies, these molecules are produced and used in less than a second. These little molecules are very unstable. So if you remember the Krebs cycle in biology, where food is converted into ATP inside the mitochondria, that's where redox molecules come from and are made. And so they're made in equal balance in healthy cells, and they're made all the time. And they get produced and used in fractions of a second, or produced millions of times a second. So redox molecules are mostly made of just 4 atoms in our body. Those atoms are hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, chloride. Redox molecules are therefore very small. They're just 2 to 4 atoms in size. That's it. Tiny. They can go everywhere and anywhere in our brains, etc. So anybody know what that little redox molecule is over on the side? Any chemists in the group? That's hydrogen peroxide, H2O2. And we make it all the time in our cells. It's part of the redox chemistry that we have to have. So redox molecules are critical molecular activators of every chemical reaction in our cells. That's profound. That's foundational, working down here at the sub-footer of our biochemistry in our cells. It's a heavy-duty statement, and these molecules carry a lot of weight. So the primary mode of cellular communication in and between cells is one of their jobs and characteristics. So there's 2 categories of action that you can kind of put in your mind about what redox molecules are doing. So they activate the efficiency of antioxidants. It's one of their big jobs. The other job, oh, by the way, and that of course stops the tendency for us to have a lot of oxidative stress or rust in our cells. The other category is facilitating this communication inside and between cells. Our tendency is to have inflammation in our body sometimes, and that needs to be managed, okay? So here's the challenge. Our bodies are unfortunately challenged by the fact that we age. And this is part of our nature. And in that aging process, we lose some of our mitochondria in our cells. There's just not as many per cell. We lose about 10% per decade in most of our tissues. Muscles would be the best example of that. And unfortunately, also, not only are there fewer, but the ones that remain are about 10% per decade less good at making energy in redox molecules. So that's why we are here today to talk about the concept of what are you going to do about this? And the good news is there are some solutions. Now, stepping back a little further, we've been down at talking about cells, and we've been talking about what these little molecules that are produced in our cells are doing. with rust and inflammation and all that. Now let's step back a little further and let's look at how some of our medical challenges can be categorized in the same categories as the molecules. So we have basically two main categories of illnesses. On the left-hand side, we have oxidative stress illnesses. And so there's a list of a few: high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, osteoarthritis, stroke, diabetes, type 2, things like that, are conditions where there's oxidative stress that's out of whack, gone wild, and creating problems. On the other side of the balance is inflammation and stress, or reactivity in our bodies that's gone wild and resulted in asthma and allergies and thyroid conditions, autoimmune deficiencies, and hormone imbalances and cancer. So when you think about our basic physiology, we've really got two buckets when we get out of whack. Okay, so back to our acronym, REACT. So E, we got R covered. E stands for eating or nourishing or replenishing our body. We have to do that every day. And so do our cells. And the vacuoles and the plasma reticulum, the cell membrane, are engaged in that process. And so our little Redox man is enjoying a carrot. So assimilating nutrients as well as good amounts of good water is critical to our health. Our kidneys conserve and release water according to our needs. They're good at that. We don't have to think about it, do we? Our stomach also absorbs water, as well as secreting digestive enzymes that help in the assimilation of nutrients. Yes, it's true. Our stomach just absorbs water, so it's important to drink water. If you drink juice or milk or something, you got to digest that in order to absorb it. That's more work. So that's why water really helps. The lysosomes are like little cellular stomachs, and they're really critical in helping our cells assimilate nutrients as well as water. Food each day for us, instead of just simply thinking of it as providing calories, food is information for the bacteria that live inside of us. And so it's been said that the bacteria inside our gut are like our second brain. Here's why. Inside our small intestine, which is about 26 feet long, there is an entire ecosystem of bacteria, which we did not know about until about 5 years ago, when we were able to do DNA analysis of these bacteria. Before then, we thought there were maybe 200 species, because that's all we could grow outside the body in a culture. But DNA analysis showed there was well over 1,000 different species from 10 different phyla. And so when we take care of propagating the right forest, like we're farmers of the bacteria in our gut, we're in good shape. But the diversity of this population depends on what we eat. And so food that's high in sugar and wheat and starchy things like that cause a shift in this culture to a more narrow, less abundant type of bacterial population. We get weight gain and inflammation and certain stresses from that occurrence. So what develops is inflammation and the release of certain chemicals called inflammatory cytokines, to be specific. For example, the ability to assimilate nutrients like vitamin D, which is a fat-soluble vitamin, is blocked or limited when there's a lot of inflammation in the lining of our gut because of the imbalance of the bacteria. And so these survival bacteria, as we call them oftentimes, or the bad guys, can cause this inflammation. And remember that there are a bunch of lymph nodes that live right next to our small intestine. So our Heavenly Father had a great idea. He said, what's the best way to help the body know what's going on the outside? Put the immune system right next to your poop. And so there they sit. About 80% of our lymph nodes are just looking at what's going on in your guts. And they know when there's stress because the bacteria are sending out those chemicals. And it worries the immune system, and that sets into stage a few troubling things that can develop. So The solution is basically just make 80% of your diet vegetables and fruits, 20% everything else, to the best of your abilities. And by doing that, the bacteria will help your body maintain a good balance. And that shift in bacteria to the good guys leads to a better metabolic rate. And so when we've got this diverse population, our body knows that things must be good out there, so it's time to get out there and get some work done, forage for the winter, store up your foods, and be ready for the, the hard times. And so to assist this, in addition to our diet, probiotics, some other herbs and botanicals, as well as redox molecules, really make the bacteria happy. Happy guys, and they love to grow. All right, just a word on water. Hydration for our body is critical. And when you have little trace minerals in our water, it is also advantageous. We assimilate that better because it has the right osmotic pressure. So a pinch of, in a quart of water, like that, a little pinch of Himalayan or different kinds of good salts would be a good idea, okay? Real salt is another brand that's pretty good. 2 to 3 liters of water a day for most adults, or half your body weight in ounces a day, is a good number. And you'd be surprised how many medical conditions are related to chronic dehydration. People that drink diet drinks all day long become chronically dehydrated, and they just have trouble with things like asthma and hypertension very frequently. Okay, REA is the next letter, react. A stands for action, having to be able to be in motion. And our mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, and cell membrane are involved in the movement of cells. So movement is the best sign that we're alive. It's a sign of life. You're moving, or a cell is moving. And some cells sit there and look pretty, but if they're not doing something, if they're not producing a hormone, if they're not producing energy or whatever they're supposed to be doing, just sitting there doesn't mean that it's very healthy. It may look pretty, but if it's not doing anything or moving, it's not vital. So we were built to be active just like ourselves, and movement helps us get out and look around and forage and get exposed to the environment we live in, and that provides feedback to our brain and our body and our immune system about what's going on. So we need to be active and out there doing things. It's really good for us. That's why we love walking, going for hikes and walking in the forest and things like that. It's instinctual. Cells also need to be aware of what's going on around them, to be aware of threats and securing resources, and this is how they are able to get that work accomplished. The nucleus will process that new information that the cell learned, and that helps the cell adapt genetically. It modifies genes. Most of our genetic material in our cells is adaptable, and we didn't know this 10 years ago. So our eye color is determined by some of our genes. It's fixed. We can't change eye color. But that represents just one of the maybe 5% of our genetic material that is fixed. 95% of the DNA in our bodies is subject to switching on or off according to how we expose our body to our environment. All of these things, all this ability to adapt, is all predicated on the fact that our genetic material is plastic. It's adjustable, movable, switch on, switch off. And so we gain more oxygen when our cells are able to move about. And redox molecules are critical in the step of maintaining cellular homeostasis. Just even being able to take on oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide, for example. There are little doorways in the membrane of the cell, and those doorways are lubricated or hinged with redox molecules. They work really good or they don't work very good, based on whether there's redox molecules present. And so communication between cells is also part of this adaptation, being able to move and share information. Those redox molecules are involved in the communication process between cells. So how do we optimize our redox potential? Exercise daily, your 10,000 magic steps. According to my watch today, I've got only 3,000 steps in. A little behind. I try to do that every day if I can. And so varying your activities, not just walking, but swimming and biking and doing fun things really does make a difference. So aerobic activities, that we are really sucking air in and out of our lungs and sweating is really key to really making for better health. And when we are expending that kind of energy, redox molecules help with the body's ability to recover from that exercise. And just like I said in the beginning slides under R. So moving on to C, R-E-A-C.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Do the muscles, somebody told me that the muscles produce redox molecules when you exercise.
They're producing redox molecules all the time, whether you exercise or not.
Okay.
So you can't turn that on and off. It's a frequent question. What if I'm supplementing my body with redox molecules? Will I become dependent on my supplementation somehow? Will that weaken my body and I'm not going to be able to make my own? The answer is you will continue to make your own, and because you're providing resources for balance, you'll do a better job of making your own molecules because of supplementing with a supplement like ASEA. And in doing so, you will not dampen your body's ability to produce energy. When would we stop producing energy? When would we stop converting food to ATP? Never. Therefore, you never stop the production of redox molecules. Okay? Good question. So in cleansing our bodies, there's a lot of waste produced as we make energy. The cell gets rid of the waste through vacuoles, and that's a critical piece of a cell's health. Toxicity builds if we don't release those toxins. Redox molecules play a key role in helping cells cleanse. Let me demonstrate that a little bit. This was helpful in me grasping this concept. So if I'm an antioxidant molecule and my job is to clean up the cells, okay? What I'm looking for are toxins. I'm on the scout all the time. And so if I see a free radical, I'm going to grab it. If I see a toxin like DDT or something, I'm going to grab it. Toxins and free radicals have a positive charge as a rule. And so when you grab a hold of something positive, now my molecular balance is off kilter. I need to grab an opposite charge as quickly as possible and then bring these two things together and neutralize them into a harmless byproduct. That's what antioxidants do. That's their job. Glutathione, superoxide dismutase, catalase, that's what they're doing. They're always just trying to bring these things together. So my efficiency is determined by how readily and able I am to find that opposite charge. Is it right there? Oh yeah, done. If I'm having to dig around and look around the corners of different organelles to find something to do it with, my efficiency drops. So this is one of the reasons that supplementing our body with redox molecules really enables our cells and our bodies to take care of toxins, okay? All right, so T is for talk, R-E-A-C-T, our last letter. Cell membrane, nucleus, and the nuclear membrane are involved in that process in our cells. And so cells literally talk to each other. They're always having this chatter of, well, what do you think? How you doing today? I'm okay, how about you? And they're trying to figure out how things are going. And so without that communication, there's no teamwork. There's no, like, you know how we always have learned our cells kind of work synergistically together, and when we're together, there's, you know, we win, like a team. Well, our cells have the same thought. So they're making decisions. Should I fix myself? How do I look? Do I look too bad to work on? Should I repair, or should I just get out of the way, kill myself, and do the whole team a favor and pull myself out of the game? Well, that's, in order to have that communication, you must have redox molecules, okay? And so these little molecules are like the mailman's letter. They're the little messengers that communicate these kinds of information. Without them, you're lost. So if I was to step on a thorn today that went through my shoe and into my toe. My toe tissue cells would say, look at that, man, there's a thorn and some toxins and dirt and bacteria. And immediately the white blood cells in the region there, because of my good circulation hopefully, are going to release a bunch of redox molecules. It's called an oxidative burst. And thankfully, that burst of molecules initiates a call to the other white blood cells. Hey guys, come on over, there's trouble. And all of a sudden, there's inflammation happening, which is good. That inflammatory response might save my life from a bacterium, let's say it's tetanus toxoid, you know, I mean, who knows? And so they're gonna capture it. The white blood cells were drawn into the tissues to help out. Everybody wins. But it only happened because there were enough redox molecules in the area to communicate that. If they're not, the message goes unheard and no inflammatory response. Oh, but what if there's too much of an inflammatory response? That's not good either. So that's where the intelligence of our immune system comes into play. And that kind of gets back to our gut.
Can I ask a question there?
Sure.
So I don't know much about redox, but I'm a pharmacognostist, so I do have a PhD in plant, pharmacology.
Yeah.
Which is similar to human in a lot of
Very,
ways.
very.
And my specialty is in
Most.
enzymes. We're taught that first signal is an enzyme, whether it's a kinase or a cytokinase or could signal that. So is redox enzymes?
Not necessarily, no. Well, they actually allow enzymes to do their work. So they're part of the enzyme cascade. So enzymes are big molecules, right?
Right.
But you got to have redox molecules in order for enzymes to take action. It's part of their
So
chemical
it's like
pathway.
they're coenzymes or
Correct.
lipocoenzymes.
Correct. Yeah, you can think of it like that. So, like in the production of certain hormones and things like that, where enzymes are involved in that step, you have to have redox molecules. Otherwise, it just drops short. Okay. The actual production of an enzyme by a cell requires redox molecules. So it's kind of, you can think of redox chemistry as really, really, really upstream. It's as upstream as you could get.
Well, we learned that enzymes have to be in a certain environment, particularly an alkaline environment, work better. So again, do redox help in creating that environment for the enzyme to work?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see, did I forget something here? Yeah, that's basically the message. So what's our job in terms of communication in our lives? It's worth mentioning for a minute. We are social creatures by nature. So are our cells. We must have interactions in order to have joy. And so our thoughts create beliefs. And when we think those thoughts over and over again, that's what a belief is. Our beliefs tend to create deep feelings within us that usually are the impulse that initiates a real action. So you can change your thoughts, and in doing so, change your actions. And likewise, you can change actions by getting back to the root thoughts that led to that. So communication is a dynamic process that actually requires more listening than talking. And if you look at our cells, there are more cell receptors than there are transmitters. And so we learn best in communication, kind of like we're doing today, where we have interaction back and forth. And having social interactions is critical in extending our life and to add quality to our life. So as we become older, we can see from research that proper social interactions can extend quality and quantity of life by at least 10%. So REACT is what all of our cells have got to do. It's what we have to do to be vital and alive and well. So let me spend a moment, just a moment, talking about this website. So it's a nice tool for anybody involved in ASEA or for anybody who's just interested in the science. As Karen mentioned, I put this together in order to help people understand redox science. I don't talk about ASEA on the website. at all. I talk about supplementing redox molecules quite a bit. And I talk about concepts that as associates you would not want to talk about. Because you don't want to talk about disease, because then you're getting technical and acting like a doctor or whatever, or a nurse, and that's not what you guys want to do in network marketing. In network marketing, you just want to be a resource to people. And so when you're asked the question, hey, would this help my back, that ASEA stuff? Because I got a bad back, I got joints and stuff that give me trouble. Your inclination is to say, and it said, I got arthritis, do you think it's going to work? And you want to say, well, sure, we'll give it a try. And well, you don't want to say that because then you're making a medical claim, all right? So instead, you might say, well, you know, what happens for you, I don't know. But so one thing I've learned that helps those that are kind of curious about what's behind it and all, and to get an idea if it might help you, is to look at a website that talks about the science behind this product. It doesn't talk about the product, just what's behind it. So there's a doctor who's put this website together about redox science, and it's got some good stuff. And so why don't you take a look? I'll send you a link in an email to a specific page that pertains to you, and then we'll talk. So that's one level of using the website. Anybody can do that. I do have a newsletter that I put out almost every month, and April's going out tomorrow. And I just talk about different topics. You may have a question pertaining to one of those newsletters. So you can subscribe to that and, you know, see if it fits. It's a nice way sometimes for people to stay in contact with their customers. Send out the newsletter for the month or whatever. There's a subscription video service that I think is most valuable because you don't know how people learn. Visual, auditory, tactile, kinesthetic kind of learners, you just never know. And so people ask me to kind of put together some videos on various topics. I think there's about 60 of them now that are about 8 to 9 minutes long on all kinds of health topics and diseases. And so I can make medical claims about redox chemistry and how it applies to asthma or high blood pressure or whatever. I've got a whole bunch of different topics. So what's fun is that if you subscribe, it's $4.95 a month. What you can do is watch these videos and get the new ones as they come out and just watch them all the time you want. Play them on your computer all you want. But you can also copy and paste the link to a video in a collection we call the community collection, and you can send that to anybody you want to, and they can watch it once and then call you back and see what they think. So you can send a copy to someone and then to another person as often as you care to on different topics. And so it's an interesting process. That way you've got full access, but that person would watch it once, and they're not a subscriber, they're just a viewer, okay? And so I think that helps people. It's you know, it's funny how oftentimes this becomes very personal, and sometimes just having a little credibility goes a long way. They're going to make decisions based on their relationship with you and whether you care. This is a way of sometimes demonstrating your care because you took a little time to send them something special related to them. And even that act can sometimes be pivotal. So it isn't the end-all, do-all, but it does oftentimes help. And so that is the end of my basic presentation, but I'd love to entertain a few questions because we've got some time and you've been a great group. Okay. So, anything on your brain? From
now, the signal transduction, I think that's what I'll need to study more than